Happy Workers' Day to all viewers, and thank you for joining the midweek edition of Journalist Hangout. I'm Ayodele Ozubakun. Today on the program, Nigerian workers send fresh demands to Buhari as Ngige describes him as the most labor-friendly president. Fulani elders berate Miyetti Allah official over comments on Tinubu. Armed bandits on 150 motorcycles attack Katsina village, kill 10, as Boko Haram hit Adamawa, kills 26. And later on the show, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo showers praise on Chief of Air Staff Sadiq Baba Abubakar. I'll be hanging out with Babajide Kolade Otitoju, Kolawole Johnson, and Sam Ibemere. So if you are ready, let the hangout start now. Thank you for staying with us. Since 1880s, workers have engaged in the struggle for enhanced welfare and better working conditions, culminating in the declaration of 8-hour working period for workers on the 1st of May, 1889, by the International Workers' Congress in Paris, France. But the struggle continues, and the day is celebrated yearly as Workers' Day across the world. With this year's celebration upon us, Nigerian workers continue the tradition by sending fresh demands to President Muhammadu Buhari. This demand border on provision of amenities to make life better for Nigerians. On this occasion too, the Minister of Labour and Employment, that's Chris Ngige, commended President Muhammadu Buhari for efforts to improve welfare of workers. Ngige described him as the most labor-friendly president for signing the new minimum wage bill into law. Babajide, now, 2 weeks ago, the new minimum wage bill was signed into law, and today is Workers' Day. Is it yet Uhuru for Nigerian workers?
No, not yet. We wait to see how many of the governors are able to pay, how many of the companies, the private companies, are able to pay the minimum wage. Yes, the workers are permitted by law to institute an action against an employer that fails to pay the minimum wage. But you and I know that that is easier said than done. We are in a situation in which state governments are finding it difficult even to pay the old minimum wage. So it remains to be seen how many of the states will indeed be able to pay at the end of the day. There are discordant tunes all over the place. Some governors are saying that they are ready to pay. Some have said their receivable revenue from the federation account must increase before they can pay. And you and I know that there can't be any alteration to the current revenue sharing formula without an amendment to the Constitution, because that is what some of the governors have asked for. They've asked for an adjustment, at least, so that what goes to the federal government should come down at the expense of the state and federal governments. So, but without an amendment to the Constitution, that can't happen, and they've been told in clear terms. So we wait to see what will happen. But clearly the workers would want the president to improve the standard of living of Nigerians. If transportation costs go down, for example, if people don't have to provide their own electricity, don't have to provide water for themselves, then the things, or even if the cost of training our kids in school will go down, then people won't be asking for wage increases as we currently have. Because even if you increase salary today, in no time, inflation will outstrip the gains. So that is the concern of workers. Make life more meaningful for our people, and they will truly enjoy living in the country.
Sam, another Workers' Day, anytime I see the Nigerian Labour Congress filing out today, there's always a demand from the federal government, and I've seen the budgets for 2019, and the federal government is ready to accommodate the increments already in that particular budget. But we're yet to see the budget of the state government, and we don't know. Some of them have been saying it. Governor Akeredolu said it today, and I've been hearing some governors that they're saying that, yes, they'll start implementing it. So give and take. By end of May, we expect this thing the new minimum wage should reflect, yes.
Well, I would say congratulations to Nigerian workers, but I don't think it's time for anyone to really rejoice. Personally, I think that if we tie the issue of any form of progress made to the issue of salary increase, then I think that would amount to treating the matter, lightly. I think that what Nigerian worker has been promised is mere tokenism, as far as I'm concerned. Tokenism because it's essentially their right. If any person needs to be commended at a time like this, it shouldn't be the Labour Minister, Chris Ngige, commending Mr. Buhari, or President Buhari rather. I think that the commendation should go to the Nigerian workers who have been very patient. The promise of salary increase that has been made is one that ought to have been, given to them more than 7 years ago, going by the rules. The last salary adjustment ought to have been made about 2016, but they had to wait 2 extra years. It took quite some time, and that task, the Nigerian workers. So I think they should be commended for their patience. You talked about the state, governors, making promises. That is good. Jide had talked about that, as well. We wait to see how many of them, will live up to the promise. Again, I think that we need to take this matter, a bit more holistically, because you could make a promise of salary increase and you're waiting the other way to take the salary from the workers. There are apprehensions that there will be tax, increases here and there. Government hasn't come out categorically to say, no, we're not going to. The International Monetary Fund had said, we think that your tax system, ought to be re-examined. But this is a very critical issue, and workers have, also harped on this matter. So if you make a promise of 30,000 naira, and at the end of the day, a worker parts with so much, by way of tax, it still leaves, room for, a lot of concerns. And Jide also talked about, other issues. I mean, you pay the salaries, and then the worker still has to take care of his security, take care of health, take care of transportation, shelter, and the rest of them. These remain very critical issues. You ask yourself, how much, if you divide 30,000 naira by 30 days, how much does it come to? So I think that what Nigerian worker has been promised by way of a salary increase is tokenism. Is their right, essentially. And I think that the system should evolve to the point where we don't have to go through this very painful exercise of negotiating for 2-3 years before we can reach any form of agreement. I think that it should be systematic in such a way that once it is time, workers get what their right is.
Kola, our minimum wage, let's look at 30,000 naira, and let's look at what obtains in some other African countries or countries in the world, and our purchasing power.
If we're looking at what happens in other African countries, first you understand that we don't buy our local things from other African countries, so we will rather situate what we earn with the environment we are. So basically you look at what workers are earning. You may want to say that at the lower rung of the ladder, you may want to decry the amount that is small, but the burden of the payment is the higher you go in rank, the heavier it becomes. For example, one issue that they will have to contend with is the working of the structure, because what you hear as 30,000 naira is the very least, I mean the lowest that that the lowest, the amount that the lowest worker will earn. But remember that that percentage increase, if it is treated like that, blanketly across board, you will now have some higher ranked officers earning so much. And you will see the distance between, we'll be widening the gap between the rich and the poor. So basically, maybe I will probably center my analysis on the lower rung of the ladder. What the man, the woman earning 30,000 naira, what can he get today? What value, is that today? For example, if he has to change that to dollar, it's not even, it would be almost the same amount with the time he was earning 18,000 naira 4 years ago. Now, locally, if he's going to buy locally, what he's buying 4 or 5 years ago, at that, for that 18,000 naira, he may likely not be able to buy it today for 30,000 naira. So the value of that money itself is not in the figure. It's if you take it to the market, what can you get? For example, you mentioned Governor Keredolu that he will pay 30,000 naira. Now, you must commend him. One, he meant backlog of salaries, and he paid them all. And he's been paying worker salary regularly. However, look at this. He met the school fees of the state university at 25,000 naira. And the school fees went up to as high as 150,000 naira. I know because the same person or two persons I was paying 25,000 naira for, before then, I'm paying like 100,000 now, for them. So if for example, if I walk...
5,000 naira is low.
It's low, of course, we know it's very low. That can't...
If you don't get any salary increase,
that can't give you anything, today in today's education. I'm not even complaining about the increase. I'm talking... In fact, I'm not addressing the increase, not complaining. We can complain because if you prioritize what you want in the state, you can decide to subsidize education and make it low. But I'm just trying to address that based on the salary. So for the parent who is earning 18,000 naira then, he will prefer to earn 18,000 naira and you return the school fees to 25,000 naira than him earning 30,000 naira and you take this, and he's paying 100,000 naira. So I'm saying that the market power of that amount today is low.
That means automatically now we should forget these kites about removal of subsidy. As in, somebody is still telling me, as at 2019, people are still saying if they remove the subsidy, we'll be buying 200 and something naira per liter and everything. That means there are some things that will not just work in this country right now. That if we're earning 30,000 naira, we can't afford to jack up the prices of these daily amenities.
Well, honestly, the issue of subsidy has to be addressed at some point. The president gave the impression that subsidy did not exist, but we know they've been paying subsidy and calling it all kinds of funny names.
Under recovery,
operating loss. The Minister of State for Petroleum has all kinds of creative names.
That's his field.
Yes, because when he's confronted in public, you will never hear him call it subsidy.
Never.
So, but you will call it under recovery, operating loss. You will call it all sorts of funny. But we are not fools. We know that subsidy exists.
Still subsidizing this thing.
The landing cost is now above 180. So what is the truth is we are subsidizing it heavily. Whether you found a way to do it that it does not reflect that subsidy does not get appropriated for by the National Assembly. The truth is NNPC gets to pay subsidy because all they need to do is just net off the subsidy element from crude oil sales. They are not going to tell you and I that this is how they do it. But the truth is subsidy is alive and well. And when you look at how much we set aside for subsidy, is way higher than the amount of money, the budget that we set aside for education, for health. So at some point, that decision has to be taken. If we had fixed our refineries, this would not have happened. And it's a massive shame on Nigerian leaders that increasingly they neither succeeded in fixing the refineries nor building new ones. You see,
I just read this now.
You see Saudi Arabia,
900 million.
Katiku
Saudi
said he was
Arabia-
going to resign if refineries are not working this year.
No. He didn't say they are not working this year. He said if we continue to import by 2019. But what he had in mind was Dangote's refinery was due to be opened in 2019.
Okay.
And Dangote refinery will do 650,000 barrels a day, which is more than what we need.
Okay.
We'll have enough. We will even have enough to export. You know. So the point that I even wanted to make was that Saudi Arabia is the market leader, both in the export of refined crude and even export of crude itself. But they continue to build new refineries. So there are some refineries that will be dedicated to domestic consumption, and there are some refineries that will be dedicated to servicing foreign clients.
Like
So
us, who have refused to build.
if a country can build new refineries, let's even agree that our refineries, the way they are, they are a basket case, that we shouldn't be wasting money on them.
Perpetually turning it around.
How about building new ones? If we set out to build a new refinery, just as we saying with Dangote, in 3-4 years, we can finish a new refinery. Dangote's refinery will be one of the biggest in the world. And in 3-4 years, we are seeing that it's about to bring that to fruition. It's just a lack of seriousness on the part of government. Government always wants to do that which is easier. It's easier to import than actually build refineries. And if we had refineries, no one would be talking about this subsidy thing. We are just a wasteful nation. Nobody would be talking about so much money that we waste on subsidy. And at the end of the day, it's actually NNPC that is allowed to do it all alone.
Finally,
NNPC being given the leeway to simply handle matters of subsidy in this country.
And yet they keep declaring loss every year. Then you wonder, can they open their books so that even if we are paying subsidy, let's know, let there be transparency in that regime of subsidy payment. Besides that, we don't need to build the bigger refineries. If we can't build the same size with Dangote, what are we doing with the modular refinery? Now, when we moved the
Why shouldn't
JTF,
a country be able to build a refinery if an individual can build?
Of course we can.
If a single state in America will have 25 refineries.
What I'm saying here is this.
A single state.
What I'm saying here is
17,
this.
some have 17, some have 25.
Yes, if a government thinks that, okay, we may not be able to build this size of refinery in the lifetime of a single administration, you can go into modular refinery. Do you know the thousands of modular refineries that were destroyed in the Niger Delta during the war? We should have gotten those things and convert them to use.
All right. The war of words over perceived presidential ambition of the national leader of the governing All Progressive Congress, APC, in Nigeria reminds one of a popular statement credited to a Chinese statesman. It goes thus: politics is war without bloodshed, while war is politics with bloodshed. One Bello Badejo, the president of Miyetti Allah, attacked Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu in a newspaper interview that he cannot become the president of Nigeria. But some Fulani elders have chided him and distanced themselves from his comments. A group, Concerned Fulani Leaders Forum, led by Mohammed Bawa, said Badejo made this statement to serve some devious interests. They warned him to stop using the name of Miyetti Allah to spread the gospel of hate and urged him to tender unreserved apology to Asiwaju. It is still a long walk to 2023, yet mischief makers are already here and doing permutation. Now, gentlemen, we've not even had the inauguration for this second time of President Muhammadu Buhari. and sometime this month, maybe on the 29th, the new administration, the administration will have a second term in office. But what is this? Immediately after that election, it has been won and lost. I started reading, even from the former SSG. That one, first of all, said, no, that there's nothing saying that power should return to the South, that the North can still, vie for the presidency. And the next thing, this Miyetti Allah guy, Jide, let me start from you. What is in the offing? Because I know for any action of these politicians, there must be something or somebody behind that is beating this drum.
Well, first and foremost, the person who made this comment, Abdullah Bodejo, represents Miyetti Allah, Katal Hore. That is not the mainstream group of Miyetti Allah. There is the Miyetti Allah Cattle Breeders Association. There is Miyetti Allah Katal Hore. So the group that it belongs to is not the mainstream faction of Miyetti Allah. And that has to be clear. And it is not the Miyetti Allah group that many see as having credibility. And this individual's credibility has always been in doubt. That is what the Fulani leaders are saying.
The Bodejo guy?
Yes, that this is what he does, this is what he enjoys doing, just to seek attention. It was said that sometime in January this year, he wanted an audience with Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. He wanted to parade himself like a big-time mobilizer. But in the politics of Nigeria, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is a big dog in the yard. So he will know who is indeed a big mobilizer. So you are not going to walk up to that kind of person and simply sweet talk him that, look, you can make mountains out of a molehill and other.
He didn't get that audience?
He didn't.
Okay.
That is what those guys have said. And they have a history of him or his group doing, saying negative things and making the rest of the country feel that this is actually Miyetti Allah. So that's why they are saying, look, stop using that name. Perhaps they should find another name so that people will know that this is not really the mainstream Miyetti Allah. And the mainstream Miyetti Allah group, they've come out to say, look, we are distancing ourselves from the reckless statement that this fellow has made. Nobody who is not God can determine whether anybody can be president. So a poisonous character can't sit anywhere and simply say, oh, you cannot be president. No. Obasanjo never thought he would be president now. When he was in Yola prison, he never thought he would be president. Goodluck Jonathan never thought he would even be a governor. But eventually he became a president. Even when Obasanjo became head of state, military head of state, he never thought he would become military head of state. He was said to have gone to hide inside a ship where that coup happened. If you remember, people, the big palm cells of that era, Aida, the rest of them, they told the story. After the coup, he was number 2 man. He never knew that a coup would take place. He never planned to be head of state. So he went to hide inside the ship. And they brought him and said, look, you are the next in line. Come and be president. Abdulsalami Abubakar never thought he would be president.
Very reluctant.
He was reluctant. But he was the most senior. And after Abacha died, they had a long meeting. And at the end of the meeting, he accompanied Abacha's corpse to Kano. As he stepped he was the first to step out of the plane. I called my boss. I said, you have a new president. Because he was the first to step out of the plane.
That's like a tradition.
Yes.
Protocols.
He's a senior person. Meaning that at that time a decision had been made. Because they put his corpse on one side and decided who will be next, who will now supplant him, who will become the president. It was after that decision was reached that they decided to bury Abacha around 9 p.m. in Kano. So nobody born of a woman can simply say you cannot be president. You are not God. How much more of an insignificant individual? Who knows this guy, for example? Even you cannot pronounce his name.
At all. I was saying Badejo.
Yes, you call him Badejo. I mean, it's not a figure in Nigeria who can determine where the pendulum of victory swings. And our politics is very complex.
He did not play. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the key word here. The Nigerian political space is indeed an interesting one. Very complex. You find the likes of Bodejo all over the place. These are hired groups. Oftentimes they exist just on paper. And they make a living out of it. That's the truth. Across the entire...
Thank you. Before the 2015 election, you
all
will
over
see
the place.
All over the
place. All over the place.
person endorsement.
All over the place.
And Mietiala is not even a political group.
Yeah, and
Yet you hear Mietiala, they've endorsed this person, they've endorsed that person. This same person led them to endorse Goodluck Jonathan at a time when it was clear that it did not. Even Goodluck Jonathan's excrement, they were not prepared to see.
There are monetary gains. There are monetary gains attached to these things. It's like business. That's the truth. And we must also admit that the Nigerian politician appreciates that these guys are part of the stakeholder community. They do. So it depends on how you rate the value of each of these groups. For these guys, as far as I'm concerned, they're just there to make a living. If you fall for it, fine. But we must admit one thing. You talked about how soon the Nigerian politics is responding to 2023 elections. That's the way it is. You see, in the life of a politician, the next 4 years is like tomorrow. They start planning on time. Once Tanko Yakasai took that first shot and said, look, we think Asiwaju is going to be interested in this game, everybody came out with their cutlass and their gun. It should be expected. And if you look at the permutations, on the surface, power, given the way we've defined it within Nigeria, should ordinarily return towards the South. Now, if it comes to the South, who are the likely...
Hold your breath.
Okay.
Let me just take this breather. When we come back, we'll discuss more. It's still Journalist Hangout. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this time out. Welcome back. So, Kolawole, let me get your reaction to this Bodejo guy, the Koto Kore side of Mietiala.
He's been torn to pieces. However, let me just give this a little divergent view. If you look at the basic indices in political war, strength, is he having it? His group, are they having the strength? Of course, you may say no. Then two, you look at the cultural dichotomy, the cultural, how much of the cultural thing can the group affect in the political space? You may want to say probably almost nothing. But don't forget that this group, they've been rivaling the main Mietiala group. That is why the Mietiala group, the main one, should come out to debunk the statement if actually they are not in support. They have debunked the group that they don't belong to the same. But they've not debunked this particular statement. I don't think so. I've not read it.
No, they don't have to debunk this statement.
Okay.
Because the guy represents his group.
Okay.
So because he represents his group, he's free to say whatever.
But
it doesn't mean that
that
everything he says that they will come out and say, no, we are against it.
I agree to
In any
that.
case, they don't have a position on 2023 yet.
As
Now,
the subject, the person that we're even talking about has not declared. Has not told anybody that.
That should show some red spot. Why and how? Now, the main group did not have to respond that this is not our position. But again, at a time like that, for something so sensitive, it is expected that the main group may come out to say, well, because if you check the writings in the public space, they've been calling the group Mietiala. People hardly at their own,
that's
their own stuff. That we should address squarely.
Judy has clarified it now.
That they are not the same. And I think it is time also to call on colleagues to do diligence on things like this so that you don't report. See, the platform we have, we feed a lot of people, and we must feed them with the right information and correct ones, for that matter. So I think
All right, we have to
my
move
take.
on now. Now, it is said that the race belongs not to the swift, but to the one who endured to the end. I think this is misquoted because Ecclesiastes 9:11. The race is not for the swift, neither the battle to the strong, but time and chance happened to them all. Nigerians are becoming weary of tales of woes from the Boko Haram insurgency, but we're on our path. We'll continue to bring it to the front burner till the war is won. Just on Monday, Boko Haram fighters attacked Kudakaya village in Madagali local government in Adamawa State, killing 26 people and burning several houses. But the Nigerian troops are unrelenting in the taming of the terrorists. Just this week, armed bandits also attacked another Katsina village, killing 10 persons. Jide, let's start from Katsina. For a long time, we've been talking about this thing in Zamfara State, snowballing to Katsina, and there's some areas in Katsina really under siege.
If you observe consistently now, there's no week that bandits have not struck in Katsina, because as they come under heat in Zamfara, they look for somewhere else where they can continue to operate. There is a forest called Rugu Forest that stretches from Katsina into Zamfara, around Zurumi, where bandits are very active.
This forest?
Rugu Forest.
Rugu?
It's called Rugu Forest. It stretches right into...
Nigeria. This one is different from
There are many
forest.
there are many forests in that area. Some of those forests stretching as far as Central African Republic. You know, it's the old Trans-Saharan trade route. You know, these people used to bring cattle through those routes in those days. There is a forest from Katsina stretching right up to Central African Republic. So that's why we have this problem, because there is somewhere to hide. You cannot destroy all the forests. You can only bomb their camps in those forests. And usually before you come, they will have fled with the intention to go and set up camps somewhere else. So this savannah that they went to, the local government, the savannah that they went to, that forest is located close to that local government. So they can move from the forest, attack those people, and then go back into the forest, and they can travel as far as Zamfara if they want. So this is the thing. There has to be coordinated attack on these guys, so that as they are fleeing from attack, they don't move into those states that are contiguous to Zamfara. Because we've seen attacks now happening even in Jigawa, where bandits were not known to attack people. Because it's the same people being attacked in Zamfara who are running into those places to go and to escape imminent death. Many times our Air Force, once they've dropped their bombs and they are doing post-operation examination, they will see clearly that they didn't actually kill anybody. Because those guys will have fled.
Some Boko Haram attacked Kudakaya in a village in Madagali local government in Adamawa State. Adamawa is one of those states that we in the northeast that we have once in a while Boko Haram.
Boko Haram attacks, across the entire northeast, for some of us, is no longer news. Happens almost on a daily basis. And that is what makes it very, very embarrassing. We've been at this for close to a decade, and the attacks are continuing in spite of all the commitments, we're put into it. It is indeed very disturbing. You probably will be looking at that small enclave and say 26 killed. In fact, what bothers me more is the data that the Inspector General of Police shared yesterday, where he gave figures concerning the number of persons that have been killed in the first quarter of this year, 1,071.
First quarter.
First quarter of this year. That's the figure shared.
That may not even be everything.
Yeah, that's this is crime-related deaths. And what makes it even more shocking is that 70% of those deaths occurred in the Northeast. That's what is disturbing. So it's not just about Boko Haram attacks. These are isolated, and we are every day. I mean, the newspapers are awash with these stories. You know,
and the so it's close to Sambisa Forest.
It's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. And like Jide has said, we need concerted efforts to deal with these things. You know, we're probably no professionals, but the guys in the military understand the way these things work. Once you push these elements, these bandits, out of a zone, they look for another comfort zone because it has become a huge industry. They make money from it. They don't want to starve.
Not prepared to give up.
Yeah, so once you allow them space to congregate elsewhere, they move. And what makes it even disturbing is Katsina is where Mr. President comes from. I mean, if Katsina is not safe with the commander-in-chief, you know, coming from there, where else is safe? It's disturbing, really.
Is there a kind of nexus between Boko Haram and these armed bandits?
Well, I'm not a military chief. I may not be able to say in specific, but if you look at the mode of oppression, you may want to say yes. And if you look at what he has described, when they launch attack against them in a place, they try to migrate to another place. And who says that they will migrate to that place in the toga of the same group? Not very likely. Now, but where the failure comes from, we know that dealing with insurgency is difficult because it is a asymmetric war. It's not the same as a parallel war where you know the enemy, you know where they are, so you can attack up front. But this is not the same. These ones are hiding within the people. They use the civilian as
shield.
As shield. So it is difficult. However, when these ones are not in the city, they are not in the communities again, they are hiding in the forest. If you also see, we plot strategies in our different newsroom, and you know that the military are master of strategies. If they actually want to deal with these insurgencies, they know how to. You know they're hiding in so forest. You know where this forest leads to. There is nothing stopping you from, if you actually want to destroy them, from blocking all their escape routes and finish them once and for all. But because it has become a business, people are making a lot of money from it. Because today, one area you know that you can't even shout due diligence, you can't shout due process. The money cannot be audited. It's the security area. So it has become a pipe that is draining our national resources. And where we should blame, not really blame, where we should encourage the government to do more is in responding in good time. When these things start small, if we fail to respond to them, they become big. It costs the taxpayers more. What we should spend one area to attack or to kill, we end up spending 10 naira, yet we are not solving it. We destroy more. We should urge the government to see when something happens in other countries, our governments, we are quick to respond. We are quick to say something. When it happens back home, is it that you don't value us back home, or you value them more than the people that you govern? So I think we should learn to also respond in good time, so that this thing does not expand beyond normal before we attack them.
Moving forward now, an effective land and air assaults are required for effective military onslaughts. If the war against insurgency is to be won, as Nigerians battle waves of insecurity like insurgency and armed banditry, the Nigerian Air Force personnel are displaying commendable capability in supporting ground troops to wipe out terror from our land. We can only encourage them to do more in this fight, just as Vice President Yemi Osinbajo is doing during the 2019 Air Force anniversary celebration in Abuja. The Vice President showered praise on the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Sadiq Abubakar, for their innovation and immense contribution to the fight against terror. Let's hear the Vice President.
I'd like to commend the Chief of Air Staff and his team for the commendable leadership that they have shown in providing for the Nigerian Air Force. As the air arm of the armed forces of Nigeria, the Air Force has shown that despite its challenges in terms of quality of manpower, creativity, and capability, we stand shoulder to shoulder with any air force in the world. I must also highlight the renewed focus on research, innovation, and self-reliance by the Chief of Air Staff. This is far-sighted. It's also an important component of the development of a military-industrial complex for Nigeria and the armed forces in general. I'm pleased to note that we're seeing an Air Force that is increasingly confident about its abilities and its capacity to innovate and to deploy locally developed technology. This is manifesting in various ways, from the locally developed operational unmanned area vehicle, the Saigumi, which the President formally inducted into service in February 2018, to the collaborative work being done at the Air Force Research and Development Center in Kaduna to produce the first ever made in Nigeria aircraft.
Vice President Yemi Osinbajo. Babajide, we've always said it on the program. We saw the Chief of Air Staff. We discovered him some time ago, and we know that there's something about Sadiq Abubakar that is so unique. We've had previous Chief of Air Staff, but there's something very, very unique about this Sadiq Abubakar.
He's simply the best. He's the best Chief of Air Staff of his generation. I don't see anyone who has come close to him. I do not see anyone. In all my years of monitoring activities in the military, I've not seen anyone like him, because he's so forward-thinking. He's so forward-thinking, and what he has done for the Air Force, many years down the line, a lot of those young boys in the Air Force now, the fighter bombers, they will find it difficult to forget him, because in terms of human capital development, he has done so much. In terms of welfare, go around the country, you see that Sadiq has built many structures to accommodate Air Force personnel. You see new structures all over the place. The day I was reading about a new building that he inaugurated in Benue, in Edo State, I didn't know. I was in Bayelsa. I didn't know that 2 days later he would be in Bayelsa to inaugurate another block of buildings for the Air Force. And if someone inherited 200 special forces of the Air Force in 2015, and he now has 1,000 special forces.
Really?
Yes. Today,
what's their job?
The special forces, they are just, they have better training. They are the best that you have in terms of the quality of training that they have. So if you have difficult operations, you push them forward. Like the Nigerian Army used them in Baga. After Boko Haram took Baga from the Nigerian Army, it was the special forces that were sent there. So special forces are usually the best. Saddam had what he called the Iraqi Republican Guard. So they are usually the elite fighters in any fighting group. So he now has 1,000. And the good thing is, about 16 aircraft that were dead, that had been abandoned, no spares. He has revitalized them, and we are now using them. They've now been sent to the Northeast to boost operations there. You know, I used to say that even the Alpha jets had been decommissioned in other parts of the world. But this man, despite the fact that he's been decommissioned, he got Nigerian Air Force personnel working with some people in ABU to begin to fabricate spares. Because those spares you can't buy anywhere else. This is an aircraft that has been decommissioned. Where do you buy spares? You know, you can't go to the country where they manufacture and get spares. So
it has been decommissioned.
Now he has got our own people to fabricate spares for these jets, and the jets are flying all over the place. They're helping us to bomb Boko Haram. Today, across the world, you see Nigerian Air Force personnel being trained. More than 100, we have more than 100 now operational fighting pilots, because he continues to send them abroad for training. There's a boy, there's a pilot of the Mi-35 that I met recently. It's from Kano. I was asking after, and they told me, he has gone to Azerbaijan. He's gone for training. These trainings are consistent. Today, for the first time in the history of Nigeria, we'll have a female fighter pilot. We always have female pilots flying the presidential fleet, the ISR, that's the reconnaissance aircraft. But for the first time, a fighter pilot, a female fighter pilot, is being trained in South Africa. And it's credit to this guy that he has totally changed the face of the Air Force.
I want to say, but it's not what obtains in the entire, Navy or the military. It's just when somebody just chooses the path of excellence that's in means of, daunting challenges.
Yes, Ayo. What makes you an excellent manager is how you fit into the 3 C's: competence, capacity, and character. And if these define our Air Force chief, fantastic. I don't see the Vice President, Yemi Shibajo, as a very trivial character. No. If he speaks for you, it means that he believes that what you have done or the things that you have proposed to do are indeed in the best interest of the country. But we must also admit that our Air Force chief is just one out of a whole lot. A tree cannot make a forest. So we can only encourage him to continue to the path of excellence. Only yesterday, yesterday or today, early today, I stumbled on a report, about somewhere in Zamfara where one of the traditional rulers was complaining that they had a crisis and they sent signals to the men on the ground, the Air Force guys on the ground, and their calls were ignored. I'm sure that wouldn't make Air Force the Chief of Air Staff Sadiq, very happy. So it's not just about him; it's about the entire team. He has to continue to work on the morale of the entire team. We wouldn't want to continue to get reports about, our communities facing crisis, and then they reach out to a component or one component of our military.
The same, and they ignore have to be careful, because the traditional rulers, they claim that the Air Force was bombing their citizens. Only for them to come and apologize that that the report was for some years ago. So even this one, till we subject it to validation, we can't be sure. Look, traditional rulers have been arrested over this banditry.
Yeah.
But some of them don't want it to end. So that is the thing.
That is true, but we also have to, like you said, we have to take this report
validate it
very seriously. It should bother any officer, whose men, are being accused of ignoring invitation to help manage crisis within communities. That's the point I want to make. No doubt about, what has been said about the Air Force chiefs, Sadiq. I want to agree with the VP that he's done his job, very well.
Your own take?
My own take would be to go away from the man that is good and go to those who are not. If today we have the God to commend this man, also it shows that we are not biased when we say that some of them are not good enough. And if you're not good enough, there's nothing you're doing there. If you're supervising the killings of Nigerians, there's nothing you're doing there. So as much as the presidency has come out to praise this man, those who are not praise-able in court, can we please find a way to let them go? So that Nigerians will not be dying like chickens every day. The value of life today in Nigeria is almost nowhere. People die every single day, and yet, nothing has been done. I salute the courage to commend the Chief of Air Staff. I also want to salute the courage of replacing those who are not good.
It was in 2016 that I first talked about this man, and I described him as the best. 2016. So it's not, but it has taken the Vice President to look at the innovations, to look at the efforts that this man is making, and to come out and praise him for his forward thinking. All kinds of things will happen. the chairman of the Zamfara Traditional Council said the person who made that statement back then, that they were killing innocent people, that he was not sent to do it. And the traditional rulers came together and apologized because the Air Force had not done what that man accused them of doing. They later claimed that the report was for 3 years ago.
But
So
this is
anything,
one.
see, anything from that area, what is going on there is big business. Anything from that area has to be validated before we give it any form of this thing, attention.
Sorry, can I add this? Now,
Quickly.
yeah, the Nigerian workers should please take agitation beyond salaries alone. Remember that the beginning of the Workers' Day was built on agitation in 1856 in Australia. So, but now the Nigerian workers should please also step up agitations to get good things done in Nigeria beyond infrastructure. They should also protest against the killings in the country and the loss of human value in the country.
Thank you. Kola Ojale Johnson, thank you for making it this edition.
Thank
Hope
you.
to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you. Then bring journalists and go to Abuja. Come to Abuja. It won't be during holidays again. It is during holidays that we come around.
The pipeline. Sam, thank you. Why not?
yeah.
Democracy Day special.
I'll be around.
So you can just you can join us.
I'll be around, no problem.
Thank you, Babajide Kolade Otitoju the Maestro. And that's it on Journalist Hangout. Join us tomorrow for another episode of the program. You can also watch Journalist Hangout on our platforms showing on the screen. We're also on YouTube, youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. Our feedback channel is Journalist Hangout at tvcnews.tv. I'm Ayodele Ozubakun. See you tomorrow, and God bless Nigeria.